Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to your Education Hour. Power moderator Elizabeth Mossop interviewing Hudson. Go.
Oh, good evening, Hudson.
Good evening.
Thanks for taking the time out of your busy and hectic schedule to meet with me and discuss the learning and education of today's world. I know you
always have time to talk about that.
Okay, great. Okay, I have a question. The first question I have for you is, you have been called digital learners. Do you agree? What is your take on learning and education?
No, I really do not consider myself a digital learner. The most effective method I know of learning is reading, writing, and practice, practice, practice. I find that most of the information on the internet too shallow and often poorly represented. For example, a lot of the educational videos in my physics and math courses over the year could have been more clearly presented and easier to follow in a written document format with numerous examples. This would have been a superior method to learning some of the complex concepts in these academic courses.
Okay, Hudson, I have an interesting question. I'm looking forward to your input on this one. What would you like to see done differently?
Mostly, I would like to see a return to the use of textbooks and long-term learning, where you have to think and percolate over a problem to essentially connect and integrate things. It's all about finding solutions to the problems, and this takes a quiet and contemplative environment where one can practice, practice, and do more practice. For my physics and math courses, my parents had to purchase Solaro textbooks in order that I had enough material to develop my problem-solving skills. This allowed me to review numerous examples and a complete plethora of practice problems. My goal for this course was to achieve 90% or better in my final grades, and I was successful in meeting my goals, 97%. I know these academic accomplishments could not have been completed without workbooks or textbooks. In addition to my academic studies, I have also been playing the piano for 11 years, and I cannot imagine where I would be in my piano and music theory skills if I did not have a multitude of music books and study guides to help me practice, practice, and practice. I know from conversations with my music and Mandarin teachers, both are employed at private schools, that the private schools still use their own textbooks produced by Solaro.
Hudson, do you believe in schools at all?
Yes, I believe schools are an important part of society. They play an elemental role in teaching many significant values such as punctuality, work ethic, and socialization. However, I am convinced that many of the fundamentals of education which were discussed in the previous paragraphs, such as long-term learning, administering lots of tests, the use of textbooks, and a strong work ethic have been driven out by the current fads of collaboration and multitasking. Can you imagine a concert pianist attempting to practice by collaborating daily with other musicians and not having the ability to study in a quiet and solo environment? Or even scarier yet, could you imagine a heart surgeon attempting to multitask during a surgery? Yikes.
Hudson, I'm looking forward to hearing your comments on this question. What do you think schools will look like in the future?
I think schools will look pretty much like they do currently. However, I believe the learning process within public and private schools will be vastly different. Private schools will continue to rely on traditional models of teaching, and their students will continue to achieve excellent results in their academic endeavors. Public schools will continue to add more fads and digital technology to their teaching models, and as a result, students will continue to the trend of falling farther and farther behind the private school students. In April 2018, the Fraser Institute released its report card on BC's elementary schools 2018, and the findings are noteworthy. Globe Newswire reported independent elementary schools in British Columbia continue to outperform the province's public schools, claiming 80 of the top 102 spots in the Fraser Institute's annual ranking of BC elementary schools.
Hudson, what do you think that schools should actually look like? What is your conception of a good school?
Well, not surprisingly, I am very much a traditionalist learner. I believe that schools should be structured to include small classes with individual desks, and students should be equipped with hard copy books and textbooks. Students should be separated by their ability rather than their age. It is important to recognize a student's strengths so that he or she is not held back in the learning process, and thus, this will keep the student from becoming frustrated, bored, or complacent. Creating a competitive environment in the school system is necessary to challenge the strongest students and to positively encourage the less motivated students to become inspired by their keener peers. The learning environment is embraced by the private school system, and their students' academic results indicate they excel in this type of environment.
In closing our interview today, Hudson, I will leave the last words to you with regards to learning and education today and in the future.
Well, you know, as presented in the CBC article, The Future on Education, Reboot Required, educators have embraced the modern teaching style of collaborative learning. This has had very mixed results. Researchers have found that a collaborative learning approach has been successful for less rigorous studies such as art, physical education, and social studies. However, with academically rigorous courses such as calculus, physics, and advanced music, the collaborative learning model fails miserably. In my opinion, there needs to be two distinct styles of classrooms to accommodate the learning of the above-mentioned subjects, these being a traditional, classical classroom and a collaborative classroom. The traditional style of classroom includes a quiet environment with a small number of students. A teacher or mentor that is well versed in the subject matter is a critical component to the student's learning process. The teacher is equipped with whiteboards for providing lectures, and following the lectures, students are encouraged to ask pertinent questions. Each student is provided his or her own desk with an appropriate hard copy teaching materials such as textbooks or workbooks. A quiet, independent learning area for each student is essential for practicing the skills that have to be taught. The key word here is practice. For example, in the study of math and physics, it is necessary to tackle many practice problems and work without distraction to find the solution. Memorization expert and McMaster University research Anita Akai argues, the more you struggle, the better. If it's a little bit challenging to remember something, it will lead to you learning. There's a thing called desirable difficulty. You want to test yourself on things that are a little bit harder to recall, because that's what's going to make the longest lasting memories. If it's too hard, you might not be motivated to do it. But at the same time, if it's too easy, it's not going to be that effective. Another vital tool of the traditional classroom is the inclusion of tests, and lots of tests. This is an effective tool for improving a student's learning potential. In Akai's research on the most effective learning strategies in today's education, she claims testing is a great learning strategy, one that has shown to be the most effective in helping students learn. Utilizing the learning strategies in a quiet environment of the traditional classroom allows the students to master the fundamentals of each subject level before proceeding to the next level, just like the process of building a solid foundation house. Now, the collaborative learning-based classroom incorporates a teaching space with a larger number of students working in groups around communal tables. This classroom format tends to create a louder and noisier backdrop, stemming from the conversations and interactions among students. This observation is well documented by educational researcher Christine Barch in her online paper posted on the website Classroom. She points out, any teacher who has managed a classroom of 20 to 30 students knows that kids with permission to converse with one another invariably speak increasingly louder, which can become a distraction from the learning process. This collaborative learning style allows input from all students and helps those students with lesser skills or less confidence. Vigorous discussions can be generated, and this is particularly useful in the study areas such as art, history, or foreign languages. Also, this form of discussion is a very effective way to learn for these students who are socially inclined or thrive off group approval. In summary, both the traditional and collaborative style classrooms do work in the education sphere, but it is essential to have the correct subjects taught in the appropriate classroom format. However, both styles of classrooms are currently facing a monumental challenge. As we struggle with information overload in our saturated technological world, it is important to recognize that whether we are learning in a traditional or collaborative style classroom, we must reduce the bombardment of distractions coming from handheld computing devices such as smartphones or smartwatches. This issue has never been more apparent than now. The recent releases of both Fortnite and PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds mobile editions has caused a massive disruption in our educational system. Teachers across North America have expressed cries of concern that these video games are destroying the learning environment of their students. Many students have fallen victim to these forbidden fruits, and this distraction is snuffing out our students' learning potential. In the past few months, there have been a proliferation of educators reviewing this problem and collaborating in hopes of discovering an effective solution. In a recent Online Education Week article, author Sarah Schwartz highlighted a number of interesting cases concerning this technological distraction in our classrooms. In one example, she wrote about Nick Fisher, a science teacher at Fort Zumwalt in North High School in Fallon, Missouri. Schwartz reported, "North High blocks all social media and gaming sites on its Wi-Fi," said Fisher, "but students tell him how they circumvent the restriction. They use virtual private networks, or VPNs, to establish independent internet connections. Dozens of YouTube videos provide step-by-step tutorials for students looking to get around school Wi-Fi controls. It's almost too easy to flout these rules," said one of Fisher's students in an email. "As soon as there is a moment in class where they're not actively writing or engaged in a lab, if there's any moment of downtime, they're trying to play," said Fisher. He's parked a plastic bin at the front of the room, reserved for the phones taken from students playing Fortnite or PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds in class. Now, I completely agree with Nick Fisher's phone bin solution to curbing the computer distractions going on in his classroom. I know this approach works. My longtime Mandarin teacher, Wendy Lee, told me she employs the same strategy in her language classes in St. Michael's University School in Victoria, BC. She requires that every student place his or her phone and smartwatch into the box as they enter her classroom. And this technique is 100% effective in eliminating the primary cause of distractions in her classroom. That's my take on education today. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for your input.
Hi, these are the credits. I would like to thank my mom for being the interviewer.
Yay!
I would like to thank my dad for being the cameraman. I would like to thank my bird Newman for not pooping on me while talking. And I would also like to thank myself for being awesome and being the pianist at the end of this video. Also, I would like to thank my mentor John for his helpful feedback.